I don't know what Pastor Joel's trying to say about my heart, but I thank him for letting me. I'm going to steal this one. I like this mic better. This one tends to be clearer, right? Yeah, magic. All right. Good morning. I'm Brandon, as Joel so graciously introduced me with all the details. But I've been here, actually, in Korea. I'm actually from Korea. I was born here, but I actually came back to Korea about 10 years ago, right after college. And yeah, so I came back and I was a part of the church, and I've been a part of the church my whole life. And so I remember coming back, and then I remember this retreat in particular where I went, and this guest pastor came and was speaking about, I've heard this before, but it was like he was talking about how he's done like multiple 40-day fasts and all the cool stuff that was happening, and going on missions, and people receiving tongues, and so, someone speaking Korean, praising God, and all these different things. And needless to say, after that weekend, I was like all amped and juiced up because it's like, oh my gosh, God does amazing things, and it's like I was just happy to share this high with people. And so I was sending this sermon series to my family, and I reached out to my best friend, and I was like, bro, listen to this. And he listened to it, and his reaction was like, meh. And I was floored. I was like, how can you say that? I mean, aren't you a fellow Christian? I mean, isn't this amazing and fun for you? Don't you want to get there somehow? And I guess, I don't remember exactly what he said, but his response was to send me some sermons from the church that he was a part of. And through that church, I began to see church in a much different light. So after that retreat, I was listening to these sermons, and after that retreat, I guess what had happened was I hit some tough times. There was some addiction in my family, close member of my family that I was trying to. I felt like God was calling me back to Korea because I'm supposed to help with that, right? And so things were getting tough, and I reached out to my local community, and I talked to the pastor, and I talked to my friends, and I felt like it fell on deaf ears ultimately, right? And so all these different reasons, I decided like not to go to church. And then what I was learning through this sermon series, or this church online, and it's a church in the U.S., was about what church is supposed to be. It's funny because even as I was sharing that story about that pastor that was saying all these things, which I still believe to be true, my wife was like, yeah, I've heard that before, right? And I think what I'd realized through the messages I was hearing was that a lot of the times I come to church, and you hear it all the time, like, the whole, what people speak in Christianese, or you feel like you need to like be at a certain level of goodness to come here, or dress nicely at the very least. Like, you can't wear that to church. I mean, like these little things that seem innocuous, they've kind of crept in. And that's one of the things I was realizing, because what the church that I was listening to was teaching me was, as Christians, the whole word is about following Jesus. And who's Jesus? What was he like? What did he do on this earth? And I learned that he never minced words. I mean, he says really hard things all the time. I mean, you lust after a woman, you commit adultery. You have to hate your mother and father in order to follow me. Like life, following me is about more suffering than life already has. You have to carry your cross. I mean, like hard things. But yet at the same time, he had this reputation. People were flocking to him. He was speaking in words that were understood by the people of that age, using stories from farming and shepherding to reach people. And there's famous examples of like a prostitute coming, weeping. Sorry. At his feet. That was unexpected. Anyway, breaking open a bottle of expensive perfumes, washing his feet with her hair. I think it's the crowd effect. This is the kind of God that he is. What's going on? And there was only a few times I feel like he got angry, and like really angry. And they were the times when, what the heck? Oof. When there were obstacles placed between him and his people. And, he'd like flip tables and actually like whip people probably. I think, well, at least he made whips. I don't know if he whipped them or not, but um, yeah, and then I started to see the church experience that I'd had, and I started to think about like, oh my God, these marginalized, oppressed, or people that just everyone thought was evil. God accepted them. He brought them in, and I felt guilty and I felt angry that people go to church and they feel guilty, and they don't get to bump into who Jesus is and how awesome he is. And so yeah, I kept looking. I mean, I was fed and nourished by these sermons, and it was great. But I kept shopping around. Like, I know I need a local community. I need people to sharpen me, to look into my life and speak truths there that I can't see. I knew I needed these things, and frankly, I couldn't find it. When I went with the mindset of, can I bring my hurting friend to church, and would they feel like there's hope? Yeah, no. So that went, but God is good, and He provided me with some community at church. And one of the good things that came out of that experience was I met my wife still. I mean, I met my wife, and it's been great, and we got married. And I had a boss that came after we got married, and they were mentors and just speaking the truths into our lives, and it was wonderful. It was all great. About a year ago, though, he got promoted and had to leave the country, and it was a worrisome time to say the least, because yeah, then I just had an existential crisis. Like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I working here? Where am I going to get my community and all that kind of stuff? And I sat him down for lunch, and I was like, bro, what am I going to do? And the outcome was he essentially told me that I need to redeem my gifts. And I won't get into the details there because it's not relevant right now. But the next day, he invites me to lunch, and of course I said yes. And it turns out it was his last lunch with Pastor Joel. And I had known that he was a part of GCC for a little while, right before he left. And so he was a part of the community group, and he was saying all these great things. And in fact, I actually came to, I think, a couple sermons by that, or a couple Sunday services by that point. And, I was like, okay, well, it seems like a nice place, and you're saying a lot of great things about it. But for me, based on what I expect, what I would like to see in church, it seems business as usual. And so that was sort of my mentality going into this lunch. And we go to lunch, and I think I could sense a little awkwardness with Joel there, because it's like, what's this stranger doing at lunch? It's my last dinner with, this guy that's in part of my group, I sense that. I could have been making that up, maybe. But anyway, we sat there, and Pastor Joel shared what was on, like, what he felt like God was putting on his heart to tell him, which was, I feel like God wants to redeem your gifts in this new position. And that to me said a couple things. First of all, wow, God really wants me to redeem my gifts. But the second thing was, it seems like, all these little stories from my boss and, this experiences and him leaving, maybe there's something here for me to take part in. And so I started having these thoughts, and right before we left the lunch, Joel was like, hey, I feel like, hey, let's grab lunch. I want to get to know you. And we ended up grabbing dinner a week or so later, can't remember, and we talked for 3 or 4 hours, and I was just pouring my heart out about, like, how angry I am with the church and how we need to do things better, and how, like, we're the problem, and I guess it was great. I love that he listened to me, and his heart was the same. And earlier he was talking about it's all about Jesus, it's all about the people. And I've been here for a year now. I've been a part of 2 community groups, and it's been like 7, 8 years of not being able to find a community, and I'm still here, right? So something is happening here. There's something going on, and Peter, who was presiding, mentioned it, and Joel. I mean, that's where his heart is at, and in my experience, I mean, it's been like real. I'm constantly meeting brothers over some beers, talking about real issues, about real struggles, things that we're ashamed of, but we're supporting each other. As married couples, we're like, marriage sucks, and yeah, it does suck. I mean, like, that's just the reality, but it's still worth it in the end, right? I mean, last semester we had a brother that passed away, and that was tough. But to see people rally around that, and even before that, them coming to our group, and even though they're going through this tough situation, for us to feel like we're being supported in our faith. I mean, that you don't get that in places, right? And so it's been real. It's been powerful, and yeah, I'm really just standing here, I guess, happy to say that he brought me here, and he's given me a place. Even just standing up here to talk to every one of you, and I'm as Pastor Joel was saying, we're transitioning here soon, but I really want to do my part to show everyone that God doesn't hate you. He doesn't hate you. But the opposite is true. He's relentlessly chasing after you. Thank you.